Put that thing away, I barked, the words ripping out of me before I even felt my lungs. Ethan Caldwell was waiting by the sandbox with his clipboard and that realtor-bright smile. His son Trevor stood at his hip, arms straight, a pistol aimed at the stroller where my 6-month-old daughter slept. The sun was low and orange, turning the slide into a strip of fire. A swing creaked behind me in the wind, slow and hungry. The pistol's metal flashed once, clean, like it had never seen dirt. "Sir," Ethan said, voice smooth as laminated paper. "You're in violation of playground occupancy. Non-residents aren't allowed during school hours." I stepped between Trevor and the stroller, palms open. Rubber mulch gave under my boots. "My wife lives here. I'm with my kid. Your boy is pointing a gun at a baby." Trevor's eyes were wide and glassy, not scared, amped. I caught the scent of gun oil, sharp and familiar. Ethan didn't even glance at the weapon. "Trevor is protecting community property," he replied. "You refused the gate code last week. That makes you a guest. Guests need a resident present." "Protecting?" My throat went desert dry. "He's threatening my daughter. Tell him to lower it." From the bench under the sycamore, Maya Patel, quiet nurse from Maple Court, shifted like she wanted to vanish. Her fingers strangled a plastic water bottle. She'd seen this kind of stubbornness before. It showed in her face. Ethan flicked his clipboard toward me. "If you don't comply, we'll call security. Again. Call whoever. You handle the gun first." Trevor took a half step forward. The stroller wheels squeaked as a breeze nudged them. My daughter's chest rose and fell, soft as a sleeping kitten. The world narrowed to that barrel. "Back up, man," Trevor muttered. "Dad says you're trespassing." I kept my voice low. "Trevor, listen. That thing isn't a toy. Lower it, now." Ethan snapped. "Don't address my son. Address the board representative." Procedure as armor, even now. Behind him, the HOA fountain burbled, stone dolphins spitting water into a pool they bragged about in newsletters. I'd been fined over that fountain's quiet hours once, because my daughter cried in the evening. Maya stood, knees shaking. "Ethan, this is insane. Put it away." He didn't look at her. "Mrs. Patel, return to your unit. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns everyone," she whispered, and her voice cracked on the last word. I pulled out my phone without dropping my eyes from Trevor. "I'm calling the police." Ethan's eyebrows lifted, almost bored. "Go ahead. Tell them you broke into a locked facility. We have you on camera. Then they'll see your son aiming at an infant." For a heartbeat, Trevor's arm wobbled. Fear flickered. Ethan leaned down, murmured something, and Trevor steadied again like he'd been coached. Something in me went cold and deliberate. I nudged the stroller back an inch with my boot and planted myself in front of it. "Ethan," I said, "you're about to ruin your kid's life. Step aside." That HOA smile tightened. "You ruined yours when you moved in without approval." The dispatcher picked up. 911, what's your emergency?" I stared at the gun, at my sleeping baby, at the man who thought a rulebook made him king. What would you do if an HOA official let his son point a gun at your child just to win an argument? Hit subscribe, because this gets worse before it gets better. Let me back up and tell you how this started. 2 years earlier, I'd rolled into Briar Glen Estates in a beat-up F-150 and a head full of second chances. I'm a civil engineer by trade, Army vet before that. And after my wife Lena and I lost our first pregnancy, we wanted quiet, trees, sidewalks, somewhere to raise the kid we prayed for. Briar Glen's sycamore-lined lanes and that polished playground felt like a promise. I thought paying dues meant buying into a community. I didn't know Ethan ran the HOA like a border checkpoint, or that my name was already on a folder in his office, stamped violator, before I unpacked a box. Quietly so. By the time I hung up with 911, the playground felt stripped bare, like a stage after the curtain drops. Trevor still had the pistol up, breathing ragged. Ethan's jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. Maya stood behind me, close enough that I felt her tremor in the air. "Police are on their way," I said. Ethan finally looked at the gun. "Trevor," he snapped too loud. "Inside, now." Trevor lowered it, eyes darting to his dad, and jogged toward the townhouse row. The gun disappeared under his hoodie. My knees went watery with the delay. I leaned over the stroller and pressed my fingers to my daughter's blanket. Ethan squared up again. "You just escalated a civil matter into a criminal scene." You escalated it when your kid aimed that at my baby. It was airsoft, he said. Allowed during youth hours? Not when it's pointed at an infant. Sirens rose from the main road. Ethan's posture flipped instantly, palms open, face calm, the innocent administrator. I'd seen that switch in the army, right before people swore they'd never seen a thing. 2 officers came through the gate. One was older, broad-shouldered, eyes tired. The other was young and sharp, scanning for hands. "Officers, thank you," Ethan said, meeting them halfway with his clipboard. "Unauthorized male trespassing." I stepped forward. "Name's Daniel Reyes. My wife rents Unit 14B. My 6-month-old was threatened with a replica gun. There are cameras on this playground." The older officer held a hand up. "Who had the gun?" Ethan pointed toward the homes. "My minor's son. He felt unsafe." Maya cut in, voice shaking but clear. "He was aiming it at the stroller. I saw it." Ethan's head whipped to her. "Mrs. Patel, you're not an involved party." Her shoulders folded, then she straightened. "I'm a witness." They checked IDs. When the younger cop read Ethan's license, his eyebrows lifted. "Caldwell, HOA president." "Acting vice president," Ethan said quickly. "We manage security." The older officer walked to the camera pole by the swings. "We need the footage." Ethan smiled thinly. "HOA property. Requires a board request." "Not if it's evidence," the older officer said. "Step back." Ethan blinked, stunned. I felt a spark of relief right then. He was used to running Briar Glen like a fief. He wasn't used to someone higher telling him no. While they radioed for a supervisor, Maya stayed near me. I lowered my voice. "Thank you." She stared after Ethan, jaw tight. "He's been weaponizing the rules all year. I'm just tired of being scared of the clipboard." After statements, police went to Ethan's unit. They returned with the airsoft pistol in a clear bag. Orange tip scuffed, CO2 cartridge loaded. "Still a replica firearm," the younger officer muttered. "Still not okay." The supervisor warned Trevor about brandishing and told Ethan another call could mean charges. Ethan nodded, eyes already mapping his next angle. As the cruisers rolled out, he stepped close enough that I smelled mint gum and resentment. "This neighborhood runs on bylaws, Mr. Reyes," he said softly. "You don't get to improvise." "I design bridges for a living," I answered. "Rules keep people alive. Yours just keep you in charge." His smile curdled. "Expect formal action. Your wife's lease is contingent on compliance." He walked off toward the HOA fountain, the stone dolphin spitting water into the pool like it was laughing at me. That night, Lena held our daughter against her chest while I paced our living room, still hearing that barrel click in my ears. I opened the Briar Glen governing docs on my laptop, the way I'd open structural specs on a site ready to fail, page after page of petty enforcement. Paint shades, fence heights, resident-only amenities. Then I hit the security section and felt my stomach drop. The HOA had no licensed security contractor, no authority to detain, and no policy allowing minors to defend community property. Ethan had been bluffing with a badge he didn't have. If he wanted a war in the margins, fine. I knew how to read the fine print. Tomorrow I'd start with meeting minutes, and I'd start with Maya. The next morning, the playground looked scrubbed clean, like the HOA erased last night at sunrise. Sand raked flat, trash cans emptied. The stone dolphin fountain burbled politely, pretending it hadn't watched a gun aimed at my daughter. Maya Patel sat under the sycamore in navy scrubs. Her shift badge hung from her neck, tapping her chest with each breath. When she saw me, she half stood, then sank back down, palms tight around a paper cup. Her right foot bounced so hard, the bench trembled. "Thanks for meeting," I said. She nodded, eyes darting past my shoulder to the walkway, then back. She peeled the cardboard sleeve off her coffee, tore it into strips, then froze when she noticed what she'd done. "He'll know," she whispered. "Ethan?" "Yeah, he knows everything." She tried to smile and couldn't. "If he figures out I'm talking to you, he'll start writing me up again." "Again?" "I'm on probation at work for attendance issues. My landlord already warned me about noise complaints I didn't make. One more fine and my rent spikes. I can't be his next project." Her fear was full body, shoulders hunched, chin tucked, breath shallow. I lowered my voice. I'm not asking you to go to war today. Just tell me what you've seen. She stared at the fountain. He does this all the time. Different targets, same play. Last month he fined Mrs. Jansen $300 for sidewalk chalk. Called it vandalism. When she cried at the meeting, he asked if she wanted the sheriff called for disrupting order. Did the board approve that fine? She shook her head fast, then stilled like the motion itself was risky. He says enforcement is delegated to him. Nobody challenges it. They just stare at their laps. And the cameras? Maya clenched the cup until it creased. He installed them, told us it was for safety. But only he has the login. He stores footage at his house, so if something happens, he decides what exists. I felt that old engineer's itch, the one that shows up when a structure is lying about its load. If Ethan controlled surveillance and fines, then Briar Glen wasn't a community. It was a rigged system, and systems can be audited by someone who cares. A couple walked by with a toddler. Maya straightened, flashed a polite neighbor's smile for one heartbeat, then folded in again. He came after me in winter, she said. I waited. My patient coded. I parked in visitor for 10 minutes to run equipment inside. Her eyes went shiny. When I came out, a tow truck had my car hooked. Ethan was standing there with his binder. I begged. I told him someone almost died. He said if I wanted leniency, I should have planned my emergencies better. She laughed once, sharp and broken, then covered her mouth. Her knees started bouncing faster. He likes the humiliation, I said. Maya nodded, barely. He needs obedience in public. I pulled the highlighted bylaws from my backpack. I read these last night. The HOA can't bar a resident's spouse from common areas. They don't have a licensed security contract. If Ethan is acting beyond what these allow, we can prove it. She leaned toward the pages, curiosity tugging her forward, then snapped back when a golf cart hummed nearby. Her whole body flinched, shoulders up, coffee lifted like a shield. It's just landscapers, I said softly. She exhaled in tiny bursts until the sound faded. Sorry, reflex. Nothing to be sorry about. Public records won't get you everything, she murmured. No, but they're a start. I opened my laptop. County registry, board filings, contracts. If the paperwork doesn't match his delegated powers, that's leverage. Maya stared at the screen, then at the camera pole overhead. I might know where they keep old minutes and receipts, she said quickly. Clubhouse storage, if I can get in when no one's there. Her hands still shook, her eyes still checked the path, but she'd said it. We'll take it one bolt at a time, I told her, like a bridge. She nodded, and for the first time since yesterday, her foot stopped bouncing. That afternoon I drove to my job site by the river, but my head stayed in Briar Glen. The steel frame we were setting for a pedestrian overpass arched against the pale sky. A real bridge, honest in its math. I'd spent my life trusting load tables and inspection reports. Ethan trusted intimidation. Different worlds, until his son aimed at my kid. I kept seeing that orange tip and thinking how quickly a rule can turn into a weapon. During lunch, I called the county clerk. I need HOA corporate filings for Briar Glen Estates, articles, bylaws, board rosters, amendments. A bored voice said, "We have what's on record. Request copies online." "Are meeting minutes or contracts filed?" "No, sir. Those are internal." Internal. Perfect for hiding. When I got home, Lena was in the kitchen, rocking baby Sophia on her hip. "You look like you're going to war," she said. "I'm going to a storage room," I replied. She kissed Sophia's forehead. "Be careful." He threatened the lease. "I know, but he doesn't get to keep doing this." We waited until dusk. The clubhouse sat at the center of Briar Glen like a little courthouse. Brick columns, frosted windows, Ethan's pride. Behind it was a service door residents used for holiday decor. Maya had texted me a code she'd seen maintenance punch in. I met her in the parking lot. She wore a gray hoodie, hair pulled tight, eyes scanning corners. Her fingers worried her keys until they rang. "You sure?" I asked. She nodded without looking at me. "If I keep living scared, it'll never stop." The door beeped open and we slipped into the hallway. It smelled like carpet cleaner and old paper. Motion lights snapped on overhead, harsh and white. Maya jumped at the click, then swallowed hard. The storage room sat in back, stacked with folding chairs and boxes labeled summer, social, and pool rules. Maya crouched and slid a carton toward us. The top was half open, stuffed with binders. Minutes, she whispered. Old ones? I pulled one out and flipped. Neat agendas, votes, signatures. I'd expected boredom. Instead, page 3 hit like a cold wrench. Security contract renewal. Deferred. A note in the margin. Caldwell to research. Vendors. What year is that? I asked. Last year, Maya said. They never hired anyone. I kept reading. Another entry. Camera installation approved contingent on third-party storage. Next page. Caldwell report system operational. Access restricted to board president. Restricted to him, I muttered. Footsteps thudded somewhere down the hall. Maya froze, shoulders up, hand to her mouth. The fluorescent light hummed louder in the silence. It's probably a cleaner, I said, but my pulse didn't buy it. We worked faster. I photographed every relevant page, security delegation, fine schedules, any mention of authority. 1 minute from March had a line that made my jaw tighten. Delegation of enforcement to Vice President Caldwell for 3-month interim pending vote. 3 months? That was 15 months ago. He's been operating on expired authority, I whispered. Maya leaned over my shoulder, reading, then recoiled like she'd touched a hot pan. If he knew that, he'd lose it. Exactly. We found invoices, dues deposits, landscaping, pool maintenance. Nothing about security, nothing about camera cloud storage. Another folder said legal, and inside were letters from residents contesting fines, all stamped denied Caldwell. He wasn't just enforcing, he was judging too. A doorknob rattled, not soft. Maya's breath hitched. I snapped the binders shut and slid them back. We ducked behind stacked banquet tables. The door opened and a shaft of hallway light cut across the floor. "Hello!" a man called. "Maintenance." Maya let her forehead rest on her knees, eyes shut tight. I held still until the footsteps faded and the door clicked closed. When we slipped out, the evening air felt like a release valve. Maya walked fast to her car. "Daniel," she said, voice trembling, "what happens when you use this?" "We take it to the board," I said. "If they won't listen, we take it to everyone." She hesitated, then nodded once. Fear was still there, but so was something new, anger that finally had a direction. Ethan called a special compliance meeting for Thursday night at the clubhouse. The email hit every inbox with his signature block and a subject line that read like a warning, "Safety incident, non-resident trespass." Lena read it while Sophia slept on her chest. "He's trying to ban you," she said. "He's trying to scare us," I answered. I printed the minutes Maya and I had photographed, stacked them in a binder, and flagged the key pages. If someone's bluffing, you make them show the cards. Thursday came wet and cold. Rain slicked the sidewalks and turned sycamore leaves into dark coins. The clubhouse windows glowed. Silhouettes moved inside, chairs scraping, a light aimed at the board table. Maya pulled up beside me, hands white on the wheel. She didn't get out right away. "I almost didn't come," she said. "You're here," I said. "That matters." We walked in together. The room buzzed with tense politeness. Mrs. Jansen sat in front, arms folded. A young couple held hands like a lifeline. At the board table, 3 members shuffled papers and avoided eye contact. Ethan stood in front of them, not seated, owning the space. He waited for 7 on the dot, then tapped the microphone. "Let's bring this to order. We had a security incident at the playground involving an unauthorized male," he said, eyes landing on me. "This behavior endangers children and violates Section 4.3. Tonight we'll consider immediate suspension of guest access for Unit 14B. A hush spread. He lifted a slim folder. "We have witness statements confirming brandishing by the trespasser." I stood. "Point of order." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "State your name for the record." "Daniel Reyes, spouse of resident Lena Reyes, Unit 14B. I raised my binder. "Before you vote on anything, you have to acknowledge you don't have authority to propose it." A ripple moved through the rows. One board member, gray-haired Carl Whitman, shifted in his chair. Ethan gave a tight laugh. "The vice president has delegated enforcement power." "Had," I said. I walked to the table and slid a copy of the March minutes forward, tab open. Delegation was approved for a 3-month interim pending renewal vote. That vote never happened. Your authority expired last June. Carl leaned in. The treasurer, Rochelle, did too. Ethan reached for the page, then stopped when he saw they were already reading. "That's a clerical oversight," he snapped. "The board's intent was clear." "Intent doesn't grant power," I said. "Bylaws require renewal by recorded vote. Show us the vote." He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Regardless, the trespass matter is separate." "It isn't. You're using lapsed authority to punish my wife and child." I flipped to another tab. "And you're controlling cameras in violation of your own conditions." Someone whispered, "What conditions?" I read from the page. "Camera installation approved contingent on third-party storage. Access restricted to the president only after a cloud contract." There is no contract. You store footage at your home. Murmurs rose. Mrs. Jansen stared at Ethan. Behind me, Maya hugged her elbows, eyes fixed on the floor. I could feel her battling the instinct to disappear. When she finally lifted her chin and met Ethan's stare, it was like watching a door unbolt, slow but final there. Ethan's face flushed. "Those minutes are internal. You don't get to wave them around." "They're HOA records," I said. "Any member can inspect them." Carl cleared his throat. "Ethan, did we ever renew that delegation?" Ethan went rigid. "Carl, not now. We're addressing safety." Carl looked at the residents, then the paper. "This meeting is about safety." A voice from the back. "If he didn't have power, all those fines were illegal." Another, "Including mine?" Ethan leaned toward the mic, forcing a smile. "Administrative matters later. For now, we vote." "No," Carl said louder. He held the delegation page up. "We can't vote on a suspension based on enforcement that wasn't authorized." Rochelle nodded. "We need counsel before any action." Ethan stared at them, stunned. I sat down, rain ticking on the windows. Not victory yet. But his armor had cracked in front of the whole neighborhood. The meeting dissolved into wet, angry clusters. People huddled under the awning, rain whispering off the gutters, and Ethan vanished through a side door without taking questions. Carl Whitman lingered at the top of the steps like a man who just realized his house was built on sand. "Daniel," he called, tugging his coat tighter. "Can we talk tomorrow? Off the record." I nodded. "Anytime." Maya walked beside me to the parking lot. Her shoulders were stiff, but her eyes had that bright, sleepless edge of someone who'd crossed a line. "He's going to come after us," she said. "He already was," I replied. "Now he has to do it in front of witnesses." Friday morning, I found the first strike on our door. A neon orange tow warning taped to Lena's windshield. Violation, unregistered vehicle in driveway. The tape clacked in the wind like a laugh. Lena stared at it, Sophia balanced on her hip. "Registered to me, with the HOA. "He doesn't care," I said. "He wants us scrambling." I peeled the notice off, took photos, dropped Sophia at daycare, and headed to City Hall with my binder and a memory stick. At the permitting desk, I asked who inspected HOA-maintained structures. They sent me to municipal facilities. 10 minutes later, I was across from Deputy Inspector Rosa Lynn, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair and a keyboard that clacked like a metronome. "You're saying an HOA official's kid pulled an airsoft gun on a baby?" she asked. "Yes, and they've been running private security with no license. Cameras, too." She frowned. "We don't regulate cameras, but we do regulate public safety claims made by unlicensed entities. And we regulate structures. Why are you here, Mr. Reyes?" "I'm an engineer. That playground sign says HOA Security Patrol. It implies authority they don't have. Also, the HOA installed the gate and retaining wall by the hill. If they're unpermitted, that's something you can enforce." Rosa pulled up Briar Glen's address. "Permits show a wall repair 2 years ago. Contractor listed as Caldwell Property Services." My stomach tightened. "That company's Ethan's?" She clicked again. "No final inspection recorded." "Meaning?" "Meaning the wall is technically unapproved," she said. "If it's supporting a slope near children, that's not small." I pictured the playground hill where kids sprinted. In the minutes, I'd seen an invoice for emergency wall reinforcement, CPS. No permit, no inspection, paid with dues. "Can you inspect it?" I asked. "If there's a complaint suggesting risk, put it in writing." She slid a form across the desk. I signed it right there, hands steady. In the Army, you learn that paper can stop bullets later. I titled the complaint, "Unsafe Wall and Unlicensed Security Claims." Rosa stamped it and promised a visit. On my way out, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Reyes," Ethan said, voice honeyed and sharp. "Your vehicle is scheduled for tow at 3 p.m. unless it's removed. It's in my driveway. Unauthorized guests can't park overnight. Your wife should review her lease." I kept my voice level. "You should review yours." He hung up. Back home, I opened the HOA portal Lena used to pay dues. Under Documents, I found Financials. Member viewable but buried behind 2 clicks. I downloaded last year's budget and the quarterly expense reports. The numbers didn't match. Landscaping was billed twice in April. Pool maintenance tripled in August. And a line called Security and Compliance Services showed a steady monthly payout to Caldwell Property Services, to Ethan's company. "Lena," I called. She came in wiping her hands. "You seeing this?" Her face went still as I scrolled. "Our dues paid him for security. While he claimed we needed a contract, he built a fake patrol so he could bill the HOA and call it necessity." A knock rattled the door. Maya stood there, rain beating on her hood. "I heard him on the phone with Rochelle," she blurted. "He's telling her you forged the minutes. He wants an emergency vote to evict your wife." I turned my laptop toward her. Her mouth fell open. "That's theft," she whispered. "It's a paper trail," I said. "And now we have outside eyes." Maya closed my door like the hallway might be listening. The living room was lit by my laptop and the nightlight over Sophia's bouncer. My daughter kicked happily, miles away from yesterday's gun. "He told Rochelle you forged the minutes?" I asked. Maya nodded. "I heard him on speaker. He kept saying, 'If we don't act tonight, we're liable.' He wants an emergency eviction vote before anyone looks deeper." "He's trying to win with speed," I said. "We win with paper." I turned the screen toward her. The budget line glared back. Security and Compliance Services. Caldwell Property Services. "That's been there every month," I said. Her eyes widened, then hardened. "He told us security was pending vendor research. He was paying himself the whole time." Fear crossed her face, then something steadier. "I can get you proof he's hiding records," she said. She pulled out her phone. "Ethan's mom lives on Cypress Lane. Last week I was there for a visit. Ethan walked in with a laptop and a portable hard drive. He said, 'This is the HOA archive. Don't unplug it.' Then he locked it in the guest room desk." My pulse thumped. "Footage, emails, minutes, the whole archive." "Yeah, off-site. You don't have a key, right?" "No, and I'm not breaking in." "Neither am I," I said. "But the bylaws say members can inspect records. If he refuses after a formal demand, that's another violation. If he deletes anything, that's tampering." Maya swallowed. "He'll stall." "Then we make the stall public." I texted Carl Whitman. "Coffee outside the gate now." He replied almost immediately. "Come with me," I said. "You don't need to share everything, just what you heard and what you saw." Carl's already uneasy. Her hands trembled, but she nodded. "Okay." The coffee shop beyond the front wall was warm and loud. Rain streaked the window. Carl sat in a corner booth, stirring a coffee he wasn't drinking. "Felt like I didn't sleep," he said before I spoke. "Ethan called at 6 a.m., said you falsified minutes and he needs an emergency vote tonight." "He's lying," I said. Carl rubbed his eyes. "I need more than a feeling." I slid my laptop across. "Here's your security budget, paid to his LLC." Carl leaned in, his face drained. "Caldwell Property Services? He never disclosed this. He sold you a problem he was billing you to solve." Maya's voice came out steady. "Mr. Whitman, he's threatening eviction tonight. He sounded panicked, like he needs the lie to stick." Carl looked at her. "Unit 7C, right?" She flinched, then nodded. "There's more," she said. "I saw him move the HOA archive to his mother's house. Hard drive, laptop, locked drawer. If you demand inspection, he has to produce it." Carl froze. "You're certain?" "I'm there weekly. I watched him carry it in." Carl sat back, jaw tightening. "Self-dealing and withholding records puts the whole board at risk. We stop tonight's vote on procedure. I'll call a properly noticed meeting and issue a certified records inspection demand. If he refuses, we involve council and the state ombudsman." "And residents?" I asked. "We show them the money trail," Carl said. "They'll vote him out." I pictured the clubhouse storage room, the binders we'd slid back into place, and the way Ethan's eyes had gone glassy when the board started asking questions. He wasn't used to friction, he was used to compliance. That meant he'd either fold or lash out, and I couldn't risk which one while my kids slept under our roof. Carl reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. Write down everything you remember about the hard drive, dates, what he said, who was there. If this goes legal, details matter. Maya nodded, taking his pen like it weighed a ton. I watched Maya tuck the notebook into her hoodie pocket, shoulders still shaking, but her gaze stayed up, finally refusing to drop again tonight. Maya let out a breath. I'll stand with you. Outside, the rain eased to mist. Behind Briar Glen's wall, Ethan was counting on a quick, quiet vote. Instead, he was about to meet slow, public accountability. Carl moved fast, like a man who'd finally realized he'd been asleep at the wheel. By noon, he'd sent a board-wide email calling for a procedural pause on any emergency actions, citing the delegation clause I'd shown in the minutes. The tone was polite, but the subtext was steel. Ethan couldn't push anything through without exposing himself. Ethan responded an hour later with a reply, all novella about hostile outsiders and safety liability. The more he typed, the more fearful he sounded. Fear makes people make mistakes in writing. I spent the afternoon doing what I do on job sites when something doesn't add up, triangulating. I pulled 3 years of budgets, lined them up in a spreadsheet, and followed the security and compliance services line month by month. Always the same vendor, always the same round number, always Caldwell Property Services. A fake cost dressed as community protection. At 4, Rosalind called from the city. We're coming out tomorrow morning, retaining wall and gate area. Be there if you can. Absolutely, I said. Outside authority intervention was no longer a plan. It was scheduled for tomorrow, too. Just before sunset, Maya knocked again, cheeks red from cold. He's walking door to door, she said, telling people you're dangerous, that you threatened Trevor. Then we go door to door, too, I said. We started on Maple Court, then looped towards Cypress. I carried a folder with 2 pages, a simple graph of dues paid to Ethan's company, and the delegation minute excerpt. Nothing inflammatory, just facts. When you're building a case, you don't swing a sledgehammer first. You set a level and let gravity prove you right. Mrs. Jansen opened her door in fuzzy slippers and a scowl that softened when she saw the paperwork. He fined me for chalk, she said, reading. 300. Paid to him? Yes, I said. If the board confirms, those fines were unauthorized. Her hands trembled. I kept thinking I'd done something wrong. You didn't. Across the way, a young dad whispered that his patio citation had come with a processing fee. An older couple said Ethan had threatened to lien their home over a late payment. Each story snapped into the same frame. Pressure, shame, pay up, don't ask why. Maya listened, nodding, sometimes adding a quiet detail. Yes, he did that to me too. And I watched faces change when they realized they weren't alone. Her fear was still there, but now it had direction. By the time we reached the cul-de-sac, a half-dozen people had agreed to come to Carl's properly noticed meeting on Monday. 2 offered to write statements. One, guy, Luis from CNA, had said he'd been a CPA for 20 years and would help audit the books. Community organizing wasn't a poster campaign. It was tired people choosing to stand together. We were almost back to my unit when Ethan's golf cart rolled up, headlights bright. He stopped sideways across the walkway like a cop. Can I help you? He called, voice echoing off wet pavement. You can stop harassing residents, I said. He climbed down, raincoat spotless. Harassing? I'm warning homeowners about a trespasser running a smear campaign. Facts aren't a smear, I said. Your company's on the budget. Ethan smiled thinly. You stole internal documents. That's criminal. Members have inspection rights. Ask Carl. His eyes flashed at Carl's name. Carl's compromised. So are you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're putting your wife at risk. I can make this very hard. I leaned in just enough for him to hear me over the fountain. You already did. Now we're making it accurate. For a second, I thought he might lunge. Instead, he pivoted to Maya. Mrs. Patel, be careful who you align with. Your lease renewal is next quarter. Maya's hands shook, but she met his stare. My lease isn't your weapon. His mouth twitched, surprised. He climbed back into the cart and drove off, tires hissing through puddles. When he was gone, Maya let out a breath like she'd been holding it since winter. He's scared, she said. Good, I replied. Tomorrow he gets inspected. Monday he gets audited. After that, he gets voted out. Saturday morning came bright and brittle. I met Inspector Rosa Lynn at the playground hill with Carl, Maya, and Luis. The retaining wall ran along the slope behind the swings, stacked blocks, mortar smeared uneven. A job that looked fine to anyone who wasn't paid to notice how gravity lies. Rosa crouched, pressed a level against the top course, and frowned. Who installed this? Carl cleared his throat. Contractor of record was Caldwell Property Services. Rosa looked up at him. That company licensed for structural work? Carl's lips tightened. Not that I know of. She walked the wall, tapping with a steel hammer. Hollow thunks answered in places that should have been dense. She pointed to a crack spidering from the corner. This section is separating. If heavy rain saturates that slope, you could get a slide right into the play zone. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. I pictured toddlers running there and felt my stomach drop. Rosa wrote on her clipboard, I'm issuing a stop-use notice for the hill area until a permitted engineer signs off, and I'll file a report on unlicensed work and misrepresentation of security services. The city will contact the HOA Monday. As she stapled the notice to the fence, Ethan's SUV swung into the lot. He marched over, blazer on, arrogance back like armor. What is this? He demanded. Rosa didn't flinch. Municipal safety inspection. This wall lacks final approval and shows failure risk. Ethan turned on Carl. You invited the city onto private property without board consent? Carl held his ground. We invited them because kids play here, Ethan. This is political theater, Ethan hissed. You don't understand our governance. Rosa's voice stayed flat. I understand permits and liability. Move back from the restricted area. Ethan's jaw worked. Fine, we'll handle it internally. No, Rosa said. You'll handle it under permit. There's a difference. He stalked to his SUV, then paused to glare at me. Enjoy your little victory. Monday is still a meeting. Yeah, I said. A real one. He drove off, spraying gravel. The stop-use sign flapped beside the swings like a warning flag. That afternoon, Carl hosted a prep session at his townhouse. Not an official meeting, just neighbors at his kitchen table, papers spread out, kids playing in the den. He asked me to explain the bylaw angle. Luis set up his laptop to walk through the money trail. Maya sat near the doorway, checking the window whenever a car passed, but she stayed. I laid out the delegation timeline and record inspection rights. All we're asking Monday is that Ethan step down pending an audit and that the board terminate any contract with his company. You're not accusing blindly. You're responding to documents. Mrs. Jansen raised her hand. Can he stop us from speaking? Only if you let him, Carl said. This meeting is under Robert's rules. I'm chairing. A younger mom, Tessa, looked worried. He threatened liens. If we vote him out, can he retaliate? Luis answered. If the board ends his delegation immediately, any new fines are void. Fraud claims also put him personally on the hook. People exchanged glances. The room was shifting from fear to focus. Maya finally spoke. He keeps records at his mother's house. If he refuses inspection Monday, that's another violation. I'll say it on the record. The table went quiet, the weight of her courage settling among us. Carl nodded to her. We assigned roles. Carl would open with procedure. Luis would present the audit summary. I'd explain the expired authority and safety notice. Mrs. Jansen and Tessa would give testimony. Maya would confirm off-site records. 2 others volunteered to count proxy votes. When the session broke, Carl walked me to the door. I should have seen this sooner, he said. He hit it well, I replied. But systems fail where people stop checking. Outside, dust settled over Briar Glen. The playground gate was zip-tied shut around the hill, the notice glowing under a streetlight. I stood there a moment, holding Sophia's mitten in my pocket, and felt something I hadn't felt since the gun came out. Control returning, not because Ethan was weaker, but because we were, finally together. Monday evening, the clubhouse lot overflowed. Headlights washed wet asphalt, and nervous voices tangled in the air. I carried Sophia in a front sling. She slept with her cheek on my hoodie, warm and heavy. Lena walked beside me, chin high. If Ethan wanted to call me a trespasser, he'd have to do it with my family, standing there in the light. Inside, the room smelled of coffee and damp coats. Every folding chair was taken. People lined the walls and doorway. Carl Whitman stood at the mic with a gavel, looking steadier than I'd ever seen him. Rochelle, the treasurer, shuffled papers. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, binders stacked like armor. Carl tapped once. Properly noticed HOA meeting. We have quorum. Robert's rules apply. Ethan leaned forward. I move to remove Mr. Reyes for disruptive conduct. Out of order, Carl said. Mr. Reyes is a guest of a resident and a safety complainant. Sit down. A ripple went through the crowd. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he sank back. Community comments, 2 minutes each, Carl said. Luis stood first, calm as Sunday math. He plugged in his laptop. A spreadsheet lit the screen behind the board. 18 months of budgets, he said, tapping a line with a laser. Security and compliance services paid Caldwell Property Services $42,000. That LLC belongs to Ethan Caldwell. No disclosure. That's self-dealing. Gasps popped. Ethan half rose. I was reimbursed. You respond after comments, Carl cut in. Luis clicked again. Residents were told security was pending vendor selection. Meanwhile, fines included processing fees routed through the same LLC. He stepped aside. The room buzzed low and angry. Mrs. Jansen came up, hands shaking. $300 for sidewalk chalk. When I appealed, he said he'd call the sheriff for disturbing order. I paid because I was scared. Tessa followed. He threatened to lean over a trash can warning while my husband was in the hospital. 2 more neighbors added quick stories of tow threats and denial letters. Each one tightened the air. Then Maya rose. She moved slowly, like her body was arguing with her choice, but she kept walking. Her coffee cup trembled when she reached the mic. I'm Maya Patel, Unit 7C, she said. I witnessed Trevor Caldwell aim a replica gun at Mr. Reyes's infant. I also saw Ethan move HOA archives, camera footage, and records to his mother's house on Cypress Lane. If members demand inspection, he must produce them. If he refuses, he's withholding records. Ethan shot up. That's a lie. Maya met his stare. I saw it. I'm done being quiet. Silence slammed down, then broke into claps that spread. Carl nodded to me. Mr. Reyes? I stood with Sophia asleep against my chest. I'm not here to burn Briar Glen down. I'm here because your acting vice president let his son point a gun at my baby and then tried to punish my wife with expired authority. We have minutes showing his enforcement delegation ended last June. We have a city stop use notice on the Hill because his company built an unpermitted wall. Tonight, you choose fear or you choose us. Applause rolled through the room, loud and relieved. Board responses, Carl said. Rochelle's voice came out thin. I didn't know the payments were to Ethan's company. That was not disclosed to me. Carl turned to Ethan. Your response. Ethan stood, polished voice cracking. Everything I did was for safety. The payments were for patrols and camera maintenance. The wall was an emergency fix. Remove me and you invite chaos. He scanned the crowd for obedience. He found steady eyes. Carl said, given evidence of self-dealing, lapsed authority, and withheld records, I move that Ethan Caldwell be removed as acting vice president effective immediately, pending independent audit. Rochelle, second. She swallowed. Second. All in favor? Hands flew up across the clubhouse. Even folks who hated meetings raised theirs too. All opposed? A couple hands hovered, then dropped. Carl brought the gavel down. Motion carries. Ethan Caldwell is removed. Ethan froze, then gathered his binders and walked out. His shoes clicked hard on the tile, each step smaller than the last. The clubhouse door banged behind Ethan, and for a second nobody moved, like the room had to learn a new gravity. Then voices rose, relief, anger, shaky laughter. Carl kept the gavel up until the noise thinned. Next step is protection, he said. Rochelle and I are suspending all enforcement until an audit finishes. Luis will lead a volunteer finance review, and we're hiring an outside auditor this week. Anyone with a complaint, put it in writing. A man by the wall called, What about our fines? We'll review every citation from the lapsed delegation period, Carl said. Invalid ones get refunded. Some people stayed behind to sign Carl's clipboard, adding their names to a recall petition in case Ethan tried a stunt. The stone dolphin fountain outside kept spitting into the dark, but it sounded different now, less like mockery, more like a metronome counting rhythm. That word hit the room like sunlight. Lena's fingers found mine. Rochelle caught me near the coffee urn as people filed out. Without Ethan's shadow, she looked younger, exhausted. "He still has access to the HOA accounts," she whispered. "We need to lock everything down tonight." "I'm on it," Luis said, already pulling out his laptop. Carl joined us, rain dripping off his cuffs. "And the cameras," Carl added. "Maya, can you help?" Maya swallowed, then nodded. "Yes." We stayed late in the empty clubhouse, fluorescent lights buzzing, coffee gone cold. Rochelle called the bank's fraud line and froze the HOA debit card. Luis reset logins, exported transaction histories, and flagged every payment to Caldwell Property Services. I pulled the bylaws up on the projector and drafted a formal records inspection demand for Carl to sign. Maya wrote a statement about the off-site archive at Ethan's mother's house, so it was on record before he could twist it. At 10:43 p.m., Carl emailed Ethan, "Produce all HOA records, including camera footage, within 5 business days or counsel, and the state ombudsman would be notified." He looked at me after. "He'll ignore it." "Then he makes himself the story," I said. Morning proved it. A red pickup with Caldwell Property decals idled across the clubhouse lot. Ethan stood by the driver's door, phone in hand, gesturing at the locked entrance like he owned it. Trevor sat inside, hood up, staring at his knees. I walked up with Lena and Sophia, the air sharp with wet pine and exhaust. "You're trespassing," Ethan said when he saw me, voice frayed. "Board removed you, not me. I'm still oversight until paperwork clears." Carl's sedan pulled in behind us. He stepped out holding a folder. Rochelle and Luis followed. "Paperwork cleared last night," Carl said. "You're no longer an officer. Your vendor contract is suspended. Leave." Ethan laughed once. "You can't suspend a contract without cause." Luis opened his laptop on the hood of his car. "Cause is right here. Undisclosed self-dealing and payments not tied to services. Section 8.2, termination for cause." Ethan's eyes flicked between us, searching for a soft spot. Rochelle lifted a printed bank notice. "Your access to HOA accounts is frozen pending investigation. Any further withdrawals will be treated as fraud." Color drained from his face. He glanced at Trevor, then back. "You people don't understand how ugly this gets. I built safety here." "You built a business," I said, "on our fear." Trevor finally looked up, eyes red. "Dad, can we go?" Ethan flinched like the words hit his ribs. For a beat, I saw a man who'd mistaken control for care and got caught holding the wrong tool. He climbed into the truck without answering. Trevor followed, not meeting anyone's eyes. A white city SUV rolled in. Inspector Rosa Lynn stepped out, hard hat under her arm. "Mr. Caldwell, we need to discuss the stop use order. City Council is reviewing your company's unlicensed work." Ethan's shoulders sagged. The pickup backed out slowly and disappeared past the gate. Rosa watched it go, then turned to Carl. "We'll need full cooperation." "You'll have everything," Carl said. Maya exhaled like a decade leaving her lungs. Lena squeezed my arm. "It's over?" she asked. "For him," I said. "Now we fix what he broke." By Friday, the neighborhood felt lighter in ways I didn't know a place could feel. Kids were back on the flat side of the playground, chasing each other around the cones the city set up, while the hill sat fenced off like a wound waiting to heal. The sycamores were bare, branches scratching the sky, but the air between houses wasn't tight anymore. People waved. They lingered on walks instead of ducking inside. A community doesn't happen because you pay dues. It happens because you stop letting fear be the default language. The audit moved fast. Luis found 3 more service categories tied to Ethan's LLC: printing, legal review, even holiday event management. None had receipts that matched the payouts. Rochelle forwarded everything to the city and to the lawyer the board hired. The state ombudsman opened a formal investigation into self-dealing and records withholding. A week later, Ethan's mother's house was served with a demand for the HOA archive. He produced it 2 days after that through counsel, with no swagger left in him. Every missing minute and clipped video came back like breath returning to a room. Trevor never came back to the playground. I saw him once, walking beside Ethan toward their SUV, shoulders hunched under a backpack like bricks. I didn't feel triumph about that. I felt sad. A kid doesn't wake up wanting to threaten babies. He learns a language of power at home and repeats it until someone finally says, "No, that's not how we live here." Ending a life forever doesn't always mean death. Sometimes it means the old version of a person can't exist anymore because the world saw him clearly and he couldn't unlearn it overnight. The retaining wall was rebuilt by a real contractor under a real permit. I reviewed the plans for free, mostly because I needed to see something in Briar Glen be honest again. On the day they poured the footing, Maya stood beside me in her scrubs, coffee in hand, watching rebar slip into place like ribs. She smiled without checking her shoulder once. "I didn't know I could breathe here," she said. "You helped make it possible," I told her. Carl kept his promise. The board mailed refund checks for every fine issued after Ethan's delegation expired. Lena's tow warning was voided in writing, along with an apology that actually sounded like one. At the next election, 3 new members ran on transparency rules, rotating camera access, published minutes within 48 hours, and a ban on any board member contracting with the HOA without disclosure and a vote. The bylaws didn't need to be weapons anymore. They could be what they were supposed to be. On Sunday morning, I took Sophia to the playground alone. The fountain still burbled, the dolphin still spit water, but now it sounded like background, not a threat. I set her in the baby swing and pushed gently. She squealed, tiny fists in the air, feet pumping at nothing. I watched other parents chat near the benches. Real conversations, not whispered survival plans. When the wind moved through the sycamore limbs, I let myself hear it as something normal again. I won't tell you everything is perfect. Places remember what happened in them. I still scan hands when someone approaches too fast. Lena still jumps a little when an email comes from the HOA address, but the difference is we're not alone with those reflexes. We look at each other, we talk, and we fix things before they rot. We laugh more too, and we show up at meetings like they matter. To me too. If there's a point to all this, it's simple. Rules are only as good as the people holding them, and silence is the real permission slip for bullies. If you're dealing with someone like Ethan in your own community, don't wait for the moment a line gets crossed in front of your child. Read the documents, find your Maya, find your Carl, build your people. And when you stand up together. What would you have done in my shoes? And what are you facing where you live? Tell me in the comments and subscribe if you want more stories where ordinary people refuse to be pushed around.